Dave Weinberg from the Press of Atlantic City. Dave, you've been covering the Eagles for a long time. You've seen a lot of, hyped players, right? I mean, Hoying was hyped. Cobb had some hype. There's been a lot of guys. Chip Kelly had a ton of hype. Is Carson Wentz above the hype train on all those guys?
Yeah, it's right up there. I would probably equate it to when T.O. came to town in 2004.
Wow.
People were pretty pumped about that. But, this is right up there. People are, like you mentioned, everybody's all aboard the Wentz wagon at the moment.
It seems that they are. Is it justified? As you write this weekend, pump the brakes a little on this Wentz wagon. Is there something that you see that has you a little concerned, or what is the reasoning that you want people to lay off, to pump the brakes a little bit?
Oh, that's okay to be excited. I don't mean to suggest that, but I wouldn't be anointing him for Canton anytime soon.
No.
People tend to, especially people need a reason to get excited, and I get that. But he hasn't really faced the top defense yet. It'll be a much bigger test on Sunday. And, once teams get more comfortable seeing him on film and devising ways to maybe confuse him a little bit, take him out of his comfort zone, I think that, there's going to be some rough patches. But, I don't blame the defense for being excited. I mean, he's off to a terrific start. But then again, like you mentioned, so did Bobby Hoying, so did Kevin Cobb, so did Mark Sanchez, so did a bunch of other guys too.
Yeah, I don't know if Nick Foles ever had his own wagon, but people were really sold on him for a while too. And as you write, he's off to a terrific start. What are some of the things that maybe you see that makes him different from the other flash-in-the-pan quarterbacks? Because there's a lot of guys in this league, I'm sure, that you've seen in Philly and then that you've covered from other teams that have all come in, got off to good. Josh Freeman had a great rookie season, and then after that, he kind of bottomed out. There's a lot of guys who, display that they can play, and then they get figured out. Is there something about Wentz, though, that you like, that maybe you think he's got more staying power than some of these other fly-by-nighters?
Well, I don't disparage the other guys, but I do like the way that Wentz has approached the whole thing. He's a very humble kid, doesn't seem to get caught up in the hype, and he'd be the first one to tell you that he has a lot to work on and a lot to improve upon. So he's not believing his own press clipping, so to speak. And I also just like the way that he has a command of everything, both on the field and in the huddle. Seems to have that leadership aspect that you really look for with top quarterbacks. Everybody looks to him for guidance and advice, and he's a kind of a take charge guy, although you wouldn't know because he's kind of a quiet, unassuming kind of kid. But once he gets out on the field, I guess the leader in him really takes over. And I'm also impressed, like on the field, like Doug Pederson was saying, with his vision, his overall sense of the game. Always looking downfield, never seems jittery in the pocket or any of that kind of stuff. So I think that all bodes well for a pretty good season to him if he can keep it up.
Yeah, and one thing that you kind of mentioned it's not the throws that he makes and the arm strength or whatever physical talents he has displayed. I think it's more the other intangibles that so many of the physically talented guys struggle with. The mental aspect of the game, which realistically in today's NFL, if you can't get that, you're not going to make it.
Right. Yeah, they talk all the time about the game being too big for some people, and quite frankly, I was a little concerned at first because of where he came from, playing at North Dakota State. And I know he supposedly ran a pro offense and all that, but this is a whole different level of competition and things. So the fact that he hasn't done that, he does seem he just seems so comfortable and poised out there, even though he's playing in the NFL. That I think that's a really good sign that he's not phased, he's not scared, if you will.
So let me
everything seems. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, let me ask you this then. Okay. Why does a guy like Nick Foles go for 27-2 and then the next year doesn't have it? Now he's cut by a team that's horrendous offensively, and he's a backup in Kansas City. Why does he go 27-2 and then the next year just completely off the radar?
Good question. I don't know.
What is he lacking? You know what I mean? Like it goes back. Like he doesn't have the great physical skills, but you would think that Foles, had the mental part of the game down, but it's like, what is he?
Yeah, he did.
I mean, that's where I think the marriage that Wentz has is he's got the mental game first, and he has the tools. Foles might have had the mental game, but I don't think he had the tools.
Well, I don't know. He's a big, strong guy too. I mean, he's not like he's Doug Flutie or anything. He's probably like 6'5" and
Chase Daniel,
230. Yeah, right. I mean, Nick had the physical tools too. I think. I don't know. Maybe it was just like Chip Kelly's system that. Everything was pretty much like, it was almost like Bobby Hoying that year in 2013, 14, where he was kind of 2013. I'm sorry, where average Chip had some certain design plays that seemed to capitalize on Nick's strengths. I don't know if they tried to expand the playbook a little bit too much or tried to make him do things that he wasn't comfortable doing the following year, but. I actually think his confidence is shot. That's more than the physical stuff. I think he just kind of got down on himself, and frustration set in when he got traded to St. Louis. I'm sure he wasn't expecting that, and things just went downhill from there. To be honest with you, I don't really know what happened with him. I guess I can compare it to Hoying in that way, where everything was set up for him to succeed, and then once you had to try to expound on things and make him do stuff that he wasn't comfortable doing. That's when the trouble started, I guess. Yeah,
and you look at a guy like Kevin Cobb, who was a second-round pick, and the Eagles basically, shipped McNabb out of town. Now, maybe McNabb's time was coming to an end anyway, but they kind of handed the keys to Cobb based on a couple of games, and he just didn't have it, right? I mean, he was another guy who was a little small.
I think the injuries was what did him in. I'm not going to say that he wasn't I thought he got off to a pretty good start, but once he got that concussion in the season opener that year, and he was never the same player after that. And the concussions are eventually what drove him out of the game. I think he had the physical tools to do it and the mental capacity too, but with him, and I just think it was the injury part more than anything else. I don't think it was a lack of ability or physical or mental ability.
Well, and that it shows the fine line of success in this league, that you can have talent, you can have the smarts.
Because of the way you better be careful with Wentz, though. I mean, his playing style and stuff. I mean, there's an injury waiting to happen. We've been talking about it for the last week or so. He took some big shots on Monday night, a couple of them, and I know he's a big, strong kid, but that stuff will creep up on you if you're not careful about it. He's got to be, I don't want to say smarter, but he's got to be a little bit more aware. Like Doug has often mentioned, we don't need that yard right now. Get out of bounds, throw the ball away, try to learn to slide if you can, and you'll last a lot longer in this league. Ben Roethlisberger said the same thing today.
We're talking with Dave Weinberg from the Press of Atlantic City, longtime Eagle beat writer. What impresses you about Doug through 2 games?
Doug? I've been more impressed with him, honestly, than I have with Carson.
Well, I'll tell you, and I think that's a fair – one of the things I think Carson is being successful with is Doug is just putting just the right amount on his plate, and then when he needs a little more, he puts a little more, but then he takes it right back. He doesn't keep adding to the plate. He just periodically – I've really liked the game plans.
Yeah, I do too. It's been like the perfect balance of running and passing, not putting, like you said, not putting too much – on Wentz that he might not be able, not putting too much on his plate. He's relying on everybody to contribute. And you're right. Like we discussed before, I had my doubts about Doug in the beginning of the year. I just didn't know if he was ready for this kind of pressure and this kind of responsibility. But I couldn't have been more wrong. Yeah, I mean, he's certainly proven himself capable, at least so far, that he very much deserves to be in the head coach in the NFL. And I've been just really impressed with the way he handles everything, both the game plan, time management, the way he handles the team too. Not one of those rah-rah guys, but always gets his point across, and seems to have a lot of confidence in his players, and the players seem to have confidence in him too.
Yeah, you went through the whole Andy Reid era. Many people thought that this was a carbon copy or an extension.
Yeah.
Do you see similarities? Do you think Doug is separating himself from that, that attachment?
Well, there's a lot to what he went through with Andy. I actually had a one-on-one interview with him during training camp, and he was explaining to me that as far as practice schedules and that kind of thing, that's all a proven formula that he learned under Reid and Mike Holmgren. And So he sticks with what works. But by the same token, he was adamant that this is his team and he's going to put his own stamp on this. And I think that's what you're seeing now. He doesn't do the time is yours and ramble on and on about nonsense, or doesn't take that arrogant approach that Chip Kelly used to take. He gives you an honest answer to a question if he knows the answer. And I think his own personality is coming through. The fact that he was a former player, he knows what it takes to succeed in this league, and I think that's all coming to light right now.
And another thing that I'm impressed with is something that doesn't get a lot of attention sometimes, Dave, is his staff, and not having a problem bringing in a high-profile coordinator like Jim Schwartz,
right.
A big name. Schwartz is a real big former head coach, and then Frank Reich's a pretty well-known name in this league. He might not be the biggest name coordinator, but you bring in another high-profile level guy, and he has did not care about bringing guys in that maybe have a higher profile than even himself.
Yeah. There's no ego there at all, and that was a worry where I personally was kind of worried that when he brought in Jim Schwartz, because Jim has such a big personality, if you will. He's a fiery, take charge kind of guy, and I was concerned that maybe Doug would get overwhelmed by that. But even Jim has said that he knows what the chain of command is here. He's not trying to usurp Doug's authority by any means. And he knows that Doug's the head coach. He does what Doug wants him to do. But Doug doesn't have a whole lot to do with the defense, which is kind of like the way Andy Reid was too. But he's very clear with what he wants, and he's not afraid to bring in guys that he thinks that can help him, even if they do have strong personalities like Jim and Frank Reich does too.
And so far, it's worked out great. I wonder, and I know that you're not privy to, you're not sitting in their meetings and everything, but how much, how much autonomy that Jim Schwartz gets with the defense, and does Doug just say, "Look, I brought you here to run the defense. You go run the defense. I'm not going to stick my head in here." And is that why so far it seems to be working?
Yeah, that's pretty much the case. I think he leaves Jim alone as far as the defense is concerned. Talked to some defensive players here and there, and Doug has mentioned now he is a player's coach, but he doesn't spend a lot of time with the defense. He kind of lets Jim runs his own ship. If he thinks there's something that might be able to help him out, he's not afraid to mention it. But for the most part, I think Doug's mostly concerned with running the offense and developing Carson more so than worrying about the defense or special teams. For that matter.
Because it seems that when you guys have the press conferences with Doug, there is not a lot of questions that pertain to defense all that much, right? I mean, it seems that he typically is the questions towards him are typically offensively slanted or injury slanted, and then when you get a chance to talk to Jim, that's where you get your defense questions. But I'll go through these transcripts, and very rarely do I see a lot of questions towards Doug regarding defense. Right.
That's generally the case because he quite frankly doesn't know the answers to a lot of the defensive questions. I mean, he can give you a general idea of what you're looking for, but like a specific player's personality or potential, that kind of thing. But we generally wait till like Thursdays when Jim and Frank Reich talk. More so Jim, though, if we really want some information about an upcoming game plan or how to defend, like Roethlisberger, for example. We're more apt to ask Jim about that kind of stuff than we are with Doug.
Dave Weinberg, Press of Atlantic City. I want to dive into some of the things Doug talked about today, including get interested to get your take on the tight end situation when Ertz is ready to go. Did you see enough from Trey Burton that makes you feel, hey, they got to figure out a way to get him involved in the offense even when Ertz comes back?
Well, that was the plan all along. Doug had mentioned back in training camp that he wanted a 3 tight end system. And the fact that Trey was there, had such a great game on Monday night, I think that just justifies what Doug's been saying all along, that he wants 3 tight ends that he can, use interchangeably. So, yeah, I don't think – actually, I was talking to Zach about that today, too, and he doesn't see any problem at all. He was really happy for Trey the way he played. And the tight ends as a group, they've been wanting to show people what they can do when they're all healthy. It hasn't happened yet, but now that well, I don't know if Zach's going to play this week because he still seems to be in some discomfort. But eventually, when all those three guys there, I think there'll be plenty of opportunities for all three guys to make plays for them.
Yeah, I was going to say, you just said that you got a chance to talk to Zach. How does he, how's he seem? Does it seem like he's getting because is that one of those things where you, even if you feel better, it's still a little worrisome that injury could, really cause almost a fatality if you think about it, where that rib is.
Yeah, he was kind of evasive about it. He really wouldn't get into detail about where it's located and stuff. And he said he's not in too much pain, but he hasn't done any football-related activities at all since he got hurt. He first thought he had sprained his shoulder, like an AC joint sprain that he had in the past. But as soon as he found out how serious it was, they quickly backed him off. And they're taking the patient approach with this, and that makes sense, especially when you have the bye week coming up next week. So, why rush him back when you really don't have to? I would rest him maybe against the Steelers and then have that extra week to rest even more, and then have him come back the next week at Detroit.
Moving forward here, I know Doug was asked about the running situation, running backs, and he seemed to close that game out with Darren Sproles the other night. Ryan Matthews, had the 2 touchdowns, but do we look like? Is there a situation where he is wanting to get Sproles more involved, whether it's in the passing game or the running game? Because I figured with Reich here, that Woodhead had the 80 catches last year in San Diego, that they would figure out ways to get him the ball in the passing game, but they seem like they're okay handing him the ball too.
Yeah, I was a little surprised on Monday because Darren, I would think maybe he'd be like an 8 to 10 carry a game guy. I guess 10 would be like the absolute max, I would think, as far as carries go, or even maybe 15 touches with passes and stuff. But he was kind of like the workhorse against Chicago, and that really surprised me. Because, Ryan's this big, strong, tough guy. I would have thought he'd be the guy that would carry the load. But I guess there was maybe something in Chicago's defense that they saw that maybe they're not as fast as some of the other guys, and maybe they thought they.
But I like that. What you said there, Dave, I like is the fact that they see something in the other they make that adjustment. Okay, this week, this is going to be a Sproles game because we see this. Next week, it's going to be a so-and-so game because we found that is something that is encouraging, as before it didn't seem that was happening in the Kelly era.
Yeah, especially with Chip. He just it was my way or the highway. He was very regimented, not very flexible. Certain guys had certain roles, and that's the way it was. And there was no changing him a lot of times. So it's kind of refreshing to see a coach that isn't afraid to take some chances, to experiment a little bit with different guys and create different roles for different players. Almost have like a 4-headed monster in the backfield. Now you got 3 tight ends instead of 2. It's just it's a nice change of pace that I think is that's going to pay off for them down the road, because now players are going to be fresher. They're not going to get worn down as often. Yeah, especially with the offense and the defense both. I mean, the time of possession has been huge. And Chip's always said he doesn't care about time of possession, but now I think they lead the league, and so I think that's going to keep them from wearing down down the road.
Well, it's something Gruden said this morning was the Eagles have depth on offense, and they're using it to their advantage. They're switching the backs, they're switching the tight ends. They're even you're seeing more Dorial Green Beckham. You're starting to see a little bit more from the the receivers had their drop. Do you think Green Beckham will eventually supplant Aguilar?
If Aguilar doesn't start holding on to the ball, maybe. Yeah. I'm kind of like wondering why he hasn't had more of a role, Green Beckham. Maybe it seems like they just have these 2 or 3 design plays for him, and I'm hoping that they're going to expand it a little bit now, because I really think as a physical specimen. Yeah. I mean, he's a huge guy, and the more that you can get him not just in the red zone, but let him. He's got speed too, so let him get out there in space and let him work yards after the catch and stuff.
No doubt.
Aguilar was a first-round pick and stuff, but I haven't been all that impressive. I mean, he's made a couple of good plays, but he's also dropped some passes that easily should have been caught. So I wouldn't be surprised if Green Beckham gets some of his reps.
Dave Weinberg from the Press of Atlantic City. Of course, the Eagles preparing now for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Ben Roethlisberger talking about Carson Wentz, and obviously Doug Pederson talking about how explosive this team is. And this will be really the biggest test. We'll see if the Eagles are up to the challenge. They will get the game at home, and you can hear it right here on 97.3. Dave Weinberg has more coverage for the Eagles at the Press of Atlantic City. And, of course, you can follow Dave on Twitter over there at PressAC Weinberg here on a Wednesday. Thanks, Dave.
No, thanks, Mike.